Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and I wanted to give an update to my rankings. So my rankings are based on how I think that these teams would perform against one another for the most part. There are some spots where it's a little tricky because I feel like I have to move teams around based on uh, like not only head-to-head matchup, but also like where they're at in their region and like the strength of certain parts of regions. So this isn't like 100% consistent throughout the entire power rankings, but for the most part, things are dictated by talent and how they would play against one another in a head-to-head matchup. But again, there are some spots where I think that the ranking is definitely interchangeable, and it's more about getting the team into an accurate tier. So I'm going to go from the bottom to the top, and I'm going to hit on some teams along the way to kind of explain why my opinion on them has changed a little bit. You're not going to see gigantic swings for the most part unless something insane happens to that team. So let's get started at the bottom. First up is Schalke. I think Schalke is the worst team in the world. I personally, it's a stylistic thing. I don't like the 10-man roster. I don't think that it's good for the players or the organization, really, because long term, if your goal is to make players improve as much as possible, some of them are going to benefit from that competition, and others are going to be irreparably damaged by that competition. The worst team in North America right now, I think, is Dignitas. But like the bottom of the NALCS is all pretty close, and I think they could all take games from one another. I think that CLG might surprise some people being down this far, but I just really don't believe in the long-term success of CLG. I know they beaten Evil Geniuses last week, but I just can't justify putting them much higher in this because I think if they were to play Vitality, SK, or XL, I think it would be European favorite at that point. Dominus is the worst team in the LPL. My opinion on that isn't going to change unless they have some kind of gigantic victories. But even at that point, I would probably just write it off as a fluke. Hanwha Life and Seohaewon Prince are the two worst teams in the LCK, but for very different reasons. So Seohaewon Prince is aggressive. They're more similar to somebody like Rogue Warriors, and they're going to fight you. And for this reason, they're able to take games every once in a while off of good teams. Hanwha Life is more reserved and is trying to play a scaling game where Lehens and Viper can kind of get into a power spike during a dragon fight or a baron fight and kind of carry the game. It's a much more difficult win condition to play around than like the chaotic version that Seohaewon Prince is playing, because Seohaewon Prince is able to potentially take a lead earlier in the game, and that's very important. Origin moved down somewhat significantly since the last video because they're making roster changes during the break. That's always pretty bad because it shows that the team, there is something going on. So either they think that Destiny is mechanically not good enough, shot calling wise he's not good enough, maybe there was some like clash of personalities. I don't know what the reason is, but because of the change, I feel like I have to move them down, at least for the time being, because the chances, I just feel like that disruption of harmony amongst the team is generally a bad thing. So if Origin is able to string together some victories, maybe this changes. But for now, I think that Origin is definitely worse than I had them previously, even with their macro game prowess. But again, they haven't been anything like that this split, and Nuke Duck has been pretty horrible. 100 Thieves jumps up pretty high because they beat Cloud9, but it's not only because they beat Cloud9. The introduction of contracts into the team, as well as Poom, has allowed them to play a more aggressive playstyle, which is more in line with the meta right now. So that isn't only going to help them in matchups against C9, it's going to increase their win percentage against a lot of teams who are playing the slower kind of match. It's similar to Hearthstone, where like you have early game deck, mid game deck, late game deck. 100 Thieves is looking like they're more of an early mid game deck now instead of a late game. And I think that previously, a lot of North American teams didn't have a specific identity. They kind of just fluctuated between those three spaces depending on the draft. I think a team like 100 Thieves would benefit from allowing contracts to play the aggressive style more often. Another team that I think that's the case is somebody like Golden Guardians. So they're pretty similar stylistically. I think that Golden Guardians is still a little bit better than 100 Thieves in terms of talent, but we'll have to see moving forward, because 100 Thieves does have Someday. I'm a huge Someday fan. I am a Contracts fan. But it's a question mark right now. I could definitely see 100 Thieves moving up further. FlyQuest is roughly the same. They they're just looking pretty horrible right now. Huge question marks in the bot lane. That really scares me. But for now, they're going to stay about where they were earlier. LNG, Rogue Warriors, OMG, E-Star, KT, BLG, Dynamics, and Sandbox. So all of these teams, I think, are bottom of the table in their own region for one reason or another, or like bottom half of the league in their region for one reason or another. LNG hasn't really done anything since their big upsets. Rogue Warriors very volatile. They can pull off some good upsets, like they beat LGD, but I just don't think that they're going to consistently beat top teams, which would make them a good team. OMG, heartbreaking loss against E-Star after an insane game one performance. E-Star, again, they beat OMG. Good for them. I'm not sure if Rat is going to stick around long term. It's tough to say right now. KT dropped pretty far in the rankings. I was hopeful that they were going to be able to continue their success with Smeb as a support. I thought this was some kind of like top-down decision that was going to allow them to kind of be a little bit different than what they used to be and kind of be more focused on aiming and putting aiming in spots to succeed. But they just played against T1 and that kind of went miserably. They didn't start Smeb game one. They brought him in for game two in the top lane. And that roster uncertainty just really kills a team for me. So I had to drop them down pretty significantly. BLG continues to play relatively well. I think that they are separating themselves from the bottom tier teams, but it's going to be tough for them to move past a lot of the middle tier teams. Dynamics, they have some good wins. They beat T1, but I don't see them being anything more than a bottom 4 team in the LCK for right now. Sandbox continues to win. I kind of have to give them credit at this point. Obviously, a lot of my statements about Sandbox are just like kind of troll and like joking around. I don't think Yamato Cannon is a very good coach. I think that he doesn't say it directly, but he does say it relatively often. Like, I think that our players are actually just better than the other team. So he's not saying like I'm having a gigantic impact on the team and the way that we're playing and stuff. I think it's more just his team's talent is higher than a lot of the other teams that they've been playing against. And that is something that I kind of thought would be the case potentially in the beginning of the season because Sandbox had somebody like Summit in the top lane. Their mid laner's been playing well. It's just an interesting spot. I have to move them up, and I'm fine doing that. But I'm skeptical about their long-term ability to be competitive in the LCK. So those are all the bottom teams. Next, we're going into the regional contenders category. So these are teams that I think do have a chance to be competitive for playoff spots or like be competitive once the playoffs start because they're either like very talented or can get hot or something like that. First up is TSM. TSM is making a change at support this week, and that's pretty bad for me, in my opinion, because like that means that Double Lift is either unhappy with Biofrost as a support right now, or the team feels like they're lacking something from Biofrost specifically, or they feel like they need to make a change just to make a change, even though C9 had just called them the second best team in North America. So it's kind of bizarre. I thought it was a weird time for a change. Yeah, I just don't think it's really the best thing to do to switch up your roster unless you have to switch up your roster. That's just a philosophical difference, I guess, that I have with some of these teams because they're all into this like new agey garbage that it's just a stylistic difference, I guess. But I just fundamentally disagree with it. I think Misfits is better than TSM at this point. I know that not much has changed from the European perspective because they didn't play last week, but I think we saw enough from TSM last week to kind of justify dropping them down a little bit and having the other teams kind of in North America move ahead of them. Rogue, I'm still not a believer in Rogue. Nothing has changed at that point, like within the league. So like my league rankings remain the same for LEC, but the points where they cross over with other leagues has changed. Fnatic, I still do believe in Fnatic long term. I think that their early season struggles will be put behind them at some point, and hopefully it's in the short term because they need to start separating themselves to solidify a playoff position. EDG, I still think that EDG is a very talented team, but I can't really justify ranking them much higher than the other teams in their league. RNG is a team that's actually moving in the wrong direction pretty fast. I love Xiaohu. I thought that Xiao Bao was really making a lot of improvements in the jungle. That he was playing carry junglers and stuff like that. It seems like the team really isn't focusing on that that style of play as much, which is pretty concerning. And I think their top laner is maybe actually a weakness at this point. It's not good for RNG. And then Afrika Freaks. I think Afrika Freaks has proven they are the well. They haven't gotten a ton of results recently, but I think that just talent-wise, they're a step above teams like Sandbox, Dynamics, and KT. So I think they are truly the 5th best team in the LCK and will be in playoffs, and I feel relatively confident about that. So moving along. Okay, so next up we have contenders. So these are all teams that I think have a realistic chance to compete for the title in their region. Like, I know that some of the European teams probably can. I know that TSM can as well. But because of the difference in talent between these tiers, I kind of felt obligated to break it down between regional contenders and contenders. Because I think the contenders, without the qualifier, they could do well at Worlds. And when I say do well at Worlds, I don't necessarily mean like competing for the championship. Like, maybe they can make it a round or two into the playoffs, the knockout stage, but at least in groups they will be competitive. It doesn't mean win games. It means to be competitive against other good teams. So the first team in this group is Evil Geniuses, and I think that even with their recent struggles, I think that they just made a really good roster move. So Jizuke is going to the bench, and so is Kumo. Golden Glue and Huni are coming in. I think that Golden Glue against Jizuke, I think that's a little bit of a downgrade, but Huni over Kumo, I think, is a pretty significant upgrade in terms of long-term talent and like upside. I know that Huni hasn't looked great in the past couple of splits, or just really the last split, but that's because he was on Dignitas, and Dignitas is not a good team. So I think that really limited his ability to play his play style. I think with Svenskeren and Huni is going to be a good combination. And then obviously their bot lane is still very strong. I think locking down the mid lane with Golden Glue, I think that his play style, being able to play more of the control mage style while also being able to branch off onto some split push champions, I think that just the consistency from the mid lane is going to be a lot easier to play around for Evil Geniuses, and their general manager or somebody within their organization kind of spoke to that when they announced the Golden Glue change. So they will have increased variance in the top lane, which is something we're seeing in Korea right now. A lot of the top teams are like definitely utilizing their top laner more to kind of create the winning difference for their team, specifically a team like T1, where Kana has just been playing out of his mind. Moving on, Team Liquid. I think Team Liquid is... I was struggling between Team Liquid and Evil Geniuses, so I think that for now, Team Liquid should still be ranked higher than Evil Geniuses, but I think that Evil Geniuses, if everything clicks, they're a more talented team than Evil Geniuses, so I could see Evil Geniuses shooting up to the Cloud9 level. Not taking over Cloud9 yet, but they would be on the same level in terms of talent as Cloud9 if this pays off, if the change pays off. So Team Liquid has been pretty steady. You have to give them credit for that. Vici Gaming is a team that has been very impressive recently. Ever since they changed their mid laner and brought in Zika, I think that has really unlocked a lot of stuff. Unlocked a lot of win potential in the team. And they've been very competitive against good teams. They beat FPX. They were competitive against JDG. There's a ton to like there. LGD, they had a bad loss against Rogue Warriors, but I still think that they are a very strong team talent-wise, and they're going to be competitive for the rest of the split. Mad Lions is in roughly the same position, if not the exact same position as last week. I think that Mad Lions and G2, in my rankings, I'm comfortable saying that the top two teams. I do think that Fnatic has a chance of passing Mad Lions pretty easily because of their like long-term experience and talent and like proven ability, and I think macro-wise, Fnatic is on a different level than Mad Lions. So I would watch out for that. World Elite and Sunning, I think, are two very good teams in China right now. I think they are markedly better than LGD and Vici Gaming, which is why I have that separation. But they're not exactly on the level of the top teams that we expect to see at Worlds. So let's get into the final tier. So here's the top 11. So first up we have C9. C9 lost, I know. but I would have left it. I would have left them the same if it wasn't for some of the results in China. C9 still the best team in North America, and like I said, I think the only real competitor for their spot in North America is going to be Evil Geniuses if the roster moves end up working. But that's not even a certain thing yet, so C9 still definitely head and shoulders above everybody else. G2, the best team in Europe. I have no trouble saying that, even though their record isn't great right now. I think that pound for pound, they're the most talented team in the LEC and the West, really. So I think that they will cream rises to the top, and G2 is that cream in the LEC. Gen G, I think, is definitely the fourth best team in the LCK, but has chances of going up further. I know that not every team from Korea in this top 10 is going to be able to make Worlds, but I'm not positive about that. They might actually have 4 spots. But either way, I think that... Actually, no, I think Europe has 4 spots, not LCK. But if any of these 4 teams that makes it to Worlds will have a lot of expectations, and they will be expected to actually compete for the title. Next up, we have FPX. FPX, they've had some bad losses. They keep looking shaky even when they're winning, so I have to downgrade them a little bit. I still think that they are one of the most talented teams in the world. It's just that the recent form is kind of becoming concerning now. So we were expecting them to kind of turn it on, but they haven't done that yet, so I had to drop them a little bit in the standings for this. It's not a death sentence or anything. They're still a top 10 team in the world, but I felt like I had to move them down. Invictus Gaming, I think Invictus Gaming has continued to look very strong. They are not dropping a lot of the games that you would kind of expect them to. They do, I mean, the matches that you would think are in question, they do give up games every once in a while, but I'm not concerned about the score of a match. I'm more concerned about getting the win. But when you're JDG and you 2-0 everybody, for the most part, you're going to deserve to be higher up in the standings. So I have moved JDG up, even though they went 2-1 against VG Gaming. I think that said more about VG Gaming than it did about JDG going down in power. Damwon Gaming, they've had some good results recently. They beat T1. I think that was a stylistic thing. I still think T1 is a better team than them. But Damwon Gaming with Showmaker, very good. I'm kind of concerned about their bot lane. I'm not convinced that Ghost is a very good AD carry. But Ghost does allow Beryl to play a very good play style with like Pantheon and stuff like that. So it's unique, and I think that it's going to be a benefit for them in the long run to have somebody as strong as Beryl at support. V5 beat Top Esports. I mean, I had a tough time not putting them above the LCK teams, but I still think the LCK teams have a longer track record that we can kind of lean on and justify keeping them higher. DRX, I still think T1 is better than DRX. It's just a talent thing. Faker's the kind of player that I can't bet against ever. They looked horrible in their match against Team Dynamics, and they still almost won. So it just speaks to the talent and the level of T1. Best team in the world, still Top Esports. I think that they were tested by V5, and hopefully that's a good thing for them. I think that they can grow from that experience. Obviously, they could also fall apart because of that experience, but I think that it's more likely that they will improve from that experience. So that's basically all of my rank. That is my ranking. Those are my rankings for all 4 leagues. They kind of blend into one another. I'm not 100% convinced that this is how it would play out, like team against team. Like if I took Damwon Gaming against V5, maybe stylistically there are some reasons to rank Damwon Gaming higher. Just as an example, I don't know if that's the case. But in general, I'm pretty happy with this ranking. So let me know in the comments if you disagree with any of my rankings, if you're not satisfied with how I have the regions kind of stacked up against one another, and all those kinds of things. But again, thank you for watching. Make sure you check out my Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. I'll probably be going live at 10 o'clock like I normally do. So thanks again for watching, and I'll talk to you later.